Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right, so we're in this wonderful text, Samsara, Nirvana, Buddha nature. Last week, I think we had a rather in-depth discussion on the 5 aggregates. I know everybody very clear about all those 5 now, and we've got that nailed. Those 5 aggregates that become who we think we are, and the conditions of our suffering, or dukkha, actually dukkha. And so moving through that in the text, we're going to go back right into the 4 truths. And so I'll pick up exactly where we left off at, I do believe. We've got a bit to get into, so I'm going to skip a few parts because they're going to get back into some of the things we've already covered a bit. But I thought this was this is right where we left off. The first teaching of the compassionate Buddha was the four truths: true dukkha, true origins, true sensations, and true paths. So most people hear it as the 4 noble truths. These 4 truths cover our present state, one that is replete with unsatisfactory conditions, use the word dukkha, and their origins, and presents an alternative, nirvana, true cessations, and the path leading to that. So we've got the first 2, the 2 truths about dukkha. The next 2 are the path to nirvana. So, well, nirvana and the path to it. The Buddha did not create these truths. He simply described the truth about samsara and its origins, as well as the truth that a path exists to cease those and bring about nirvana. And that's an interesting statement right there, simply because the 3 marks of existence that we talk about in Buddhism don't have anything to do with being a Buddhist. It's just reality. And it's talking about these 3 marks of existence: impermanence, these unsatisfactory conditions, and that we identify a self that is not self-existent. We do that. Well, that's just science. That's just the way things are. There's nothing Buddhist particularly about it. But if you were to look at the 4 seals of Buddhism, like what makes something a Buddhist teaching as opposed to any other teaching, it would be basically those 3. And then you'd add the 4th, which is nirvana, is peace, that you can be free of this. And that's something that makes it uniquely Buddhist. So the statement here is that there is a path that exists to cease this suffering, this dukkha, and attain nirvana. There is this path. That's kind of nice to know. But what's really valuable to also understand is that Buddha's not making up anything. He's just the way it is. And the vast majority of everything that is shared in Buddhism is, more or less nowadays reconciled with his scientific research. Good 80% of it. And then we get to these other pieces that, are not so well understood or explored because they require inner observation. We actually have to do it ourselves. And so the idea hopefully is that, that other 80% kind of gets you thinking, well, okay, maybe it's worth my time to explore inwardly and see if that's true. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to skip a couple pages and get to the nature of each truth. I think that's where I want to go. Yep. Okay. So, in terms of their nature, true sufferings, dukkha, first one, we may wonder why these. No, I wanted to skip ahead of this. There we go. Clicked on the wrong button. In terms of their nature, true sufferings, dukkha, are the polluted aggregates that are principally caused by afflictions and polluted karma. So you'll hear these phrases, it's usually karma and klesha, karma and klesha. So klesha means afflictions. So afflicted state. So afflictions, polluted karma. I mean, that's basically the work right there. We get rid of those, we're not in samsara anymore. So principally caused by afflictions and polluted karma. More broadly, true dukkha consists of polluted bodies, minds, environments, and the things we use and enjoy. So pretty much everything we're experiencing, we're talking about polluted. We're just talking about polluted in the sense of it's not pure, it's not clear, it's contaminated by misperception, these karmic imprints and these afflictions. In the compendium of knowledge, Asanga says, if one asks what is true dukkha, it is to be understood both in terms of the sentient beings who are born, as well as the habitats in which they are born. So both the environment and the sentient being who's born. The body and mind are internal true dukkha because they are in the continuum of a person. The environment and things around us are external true dukkha, which are not part of a person's continuum. All true origins are also true dukkha, although not all true dukkha is true origins. That's above my pay grade, so don't ask that question. All afflictions are unsatisfactory, I get that one. But our bodies and our habitats, which are unsatisfactory, are not the causes of samsara. Okay, so that one we can unpack a little bit. So afflictions are unsatisfactory. When we're talking about unsatisfactory, that just means there's going to be, there's nothing about it that's just going to be pure well-being, right? We can have temporary states of well-being, but it'll change. And so, we can have, a lot of joy around even just, drinking water. And, that could be quite wonderful, especially if you're thirsty. But that's not going to last. And then we'll be out of water. And some people have very particular about the water they drink. I don't know if you've noticed that. Yeah. And so these unsatisfactory here isn't that we're suffering all the time. It's just never going to have that lasting satisfaction. Right? It's not going to stay. So it'll become unsatisfactory. So valuable in Buddhism to recognize that that's what they're talking about. A lot of times you just use the word suffering, but sometimes sitting in a hot tub with your little bubbly water doesn't seem like suffering, and yet it's still unsatisfactory. So our bodies and our habitats, which are unsatisfactory, are not the causes of samsara, right? They're more of a resultant experience, not the causes. Habitats and bodies. What propels this process of uncontrollably and repeatedly taking the psychophysical aggregates of a being from one of these three realms. That's a question. It is the true origins of dukkha. Afflictions included karma. The chief affliction, that is the root of samsara, is the ignorance, grasping inherent existence, a mental factor that apprehends phenomena as existing in the opposite way than they actually exist. Like that's the root. That's the whole. It's just, we see, observe, and experience myself and things in a way I don't exist. And that's the big issue, which fills in everything else. So that's the chief affliction. Whereas all phenomena exist dependently. Okay, so we see it independent and actually exists dependently. Ignorance apprehends them as existing independently. The Tibetan term for ignorance, mavrikpa, means not knowing. Even its name implies something undesirable that disturbs the mind and interferes with happiness and fulfillment. Since the cause of cyclic existence is inauspicious, it's a fact. Our bodies, habitats, experiences in cyclic existence will not bring stable joy. Let's go a little bit further. So ignorance narrows the mind, obscuring it from seeing the multifarious. Boy, I don't think I've ever read that word before. Multifarious factors involved in existence. From ignorance stems various distorted conceptualizations that foster the arising of all other afflictions, especially the three poisons of confusion, attachment, and animosity. So they're just unpacking that, which I'm sure we've covered more than once, which is the three root poisons that give rise to samsara. Interesting words they're used. We usually use like misunderstanding, attachment, and aversion. They're using confusion, attachment, and animosity. You might hear just ignorance, greed, and hatred. But the confusion's the misunderstanding, right? The marikpa, not knowing. And out of not knowing, I attach to certain things, and I have animosity or aversion to other things. And that is the hub of the whole wheel of samsara right there. Everything spins out of that. Because we really believe that that outer cause is the cause of my happiness, the thing I'm attached to. I think that's what's going to make me happy. And this thing I'm trying to avoid, that's really the cause of my suffering. That's, you and I can talk about this all day. We can be philosophical about it. We can have illustrative points to see how untrue that is. We can write dissertations on it, and then we can go walk out this room and be very attached to something that is the cause of my suffering. It's, just right there. And yeah, it's just so potent. So knowing this isn't always that helpful. Unraveling it is the journey. Unraveling is the path. And so hopefully all of us have unraveled it a bit. We're a little less attached in certain ways. We're a little more wise about interdependence. We're a little wiser about how we exist in dependence upon others. And we are probably a little wiser about how we create our own happiness and well-being by doing things that are ethical and meaningful and purposeful. And so as we do these things, we may notice that if I attend to something differently with a different perspective, I get a different feeling. If I'm angry and upset at someone for something they did, and I focus on that, and they're the cause of my suffering, or if I shift that and go, wow, I've made mistakes and done things like that, just like they have, and I'm sure they didn't try to hurt me. Now I have a different feeling towards that person. The only thing that changed is how I'm attending to the person and the event. But my whole experience changes. So we can start working with this in very simple ways. And as that happens, then we get a greater degree of unraveling, slowly though. Afflictions, in turn, create karma that propels samsaric rebirth. In the context of the Four Truths, the Buddha identified craving as the principal example of the origin of dukkha, to highlight its prominent role. And that's, you often hear, especially anyone who studies Buddhism, they'll say, what's the cause of suffering? And almost all the time you'll hear desire or craving. They don't usually use craving that much, usually desire, but that's what they're talking about. Or attachment. So they'll often say, well, the real cause is this craving, this desire. But it's a desire that's born out of misunderstanding. The primary affliction is always misunderstanding, which gives rise to a craving for the things I want and a craving to avoid the things I don't want. So craving or desire is going to be very prevalent in just about everything we do at all times. Sometimes craving to avoid a certain thing, to get out of a certain thing. I don't want pain. I don't want these things to happen. Or I really want this. I like that. I'm happy when this happens. And even very subtle ways of how we can be uncomfortable. Just being in a chair, you know, we have to squirm a bit. We're uncomfortable, and now we're wanting some more comfort. And yet, if I was paying attention to something else, I don't know, watching a comedy act or something where you're just so into the humor, you don't even notice the body in the chair, right? Not even focused on that. But if I'm not watching something, I'm sitting in a chair. My mind's craving something else to do, please. You know, how about that? How interesting is that we can be seated in a chair in a nice environment and the mind wants to do something else. Right? It's just propelling all the time. And so this is that primary big mechanism, I think would be a good way of putting it, that drives samsara. And it's born out of these three poisons: misunderstanding, attachment, aversion. And the idea that if this happens, I'll feel good. That happens, I'll feel bad. And my constant craving to feel good, to be happy, to be okay, to avoid suffering, driving. But that can be a healthy thing, right? Feel good, do healthy things, make good connections. In this case, though, it's driven in a way that we don't exist, in a way that attaches to things in an exaggerated way. And then we get very attached to the very causes of our suffering while we're seeking happiness. Tricky business. So when we think about anything that we're attached to, anything that we really like, anything that, you know, we just have that for, you're going to notice some pain there, right? And then how much of that is exaggerated versus real? I mean, there's very functional, normal things that we get some pleasure from and that are healthy and are meaningful. And there's some pretty unhealthy things, but most of it's in between. And those areas are interesting to explore. If I'm angry, if I'm upset, if I'm worried, if I'm fearful. And if I explore that, is it based in reality? Or am I fearing something that hasn't happened yet? And am I worrying about something I have no control over? how many things have I worried about that I've survived and been okay with, right? So we can start looking at how we just exaggerate on a very normal level and create a lot of stress. And it's not that big a deal. And then how we build up our attachments and think that that's the source of my happiness instead of a condition that can give rise to it. But, that's important. So working with this, it's really about noting, where's my craving coming from? Is my craving healthy? Is it based in reality? Is it not? There's some benefit to having a good desire to being physically healthy, right? So we might have a desire to exercise. And then we might be on the thing which if I don't exercise, I don't even know what to do, right? A lot of people exercise too much. Our friendships and relationships and the things that we do and the things that we get caught up in, our family. Some people actually are very attached to their grandkids. Pretty interesting. My grandkids. And what about somebody else's grandkids? Aren't they wonderful too? And but then there's the rub, the me and mine, me and mine, me and mine, and the stronger that sense of me and mine, the stronger the attachment, the stronger the suffering, the real struggle. When in fact everything is ultimately we and ours, and there's nothing that is me and mine. But it didn't feel that way. Right? It doesn't feel that way. So out of that me and mine, then we get very attached, because we become the center of our universe. And we actually are very centered, focused on what I like and what I don't like, how I judge people, I evaluate people and things. And so often that's not done through a bigger vision of an unfolding world, but kind of my own conditioning, my own viewpoints, my own values. And it's very centrally located with me, which creates a lot of suffering because people do things I don't like.
Yeah, so this idea of me and mine and using the grandchildren, so are you saying, I remember, I forget which monk was talking about loving all people like they're all your children. But
Yeah.
So like someone who's pretty enlightened would be exploring their attachment to their grandchildren and maybe trying to extend that attachment to all sentient beings rather than just letting it kind of like potentiating the love for one's progeny, so to speak.
Yes, and online, did you hear much of that? Should I repeat it a bit? Okay, yeah. So, just thinking in terms of attachment with our own grandchild, and your question is more about more enlightened or more developed.
What do you do when you notice that attachment?
Yeah.
Like, my grandchild.
Right. Yeah. So, but I do, you unpack something as nice as the distinction between my grandchild, very attached, mine, your grandchild, yeah, pretty cute, yeah, so mine, I'm not going to have as much attachment, right? And you use an interesting word. Do we kind of extend, that degree of attachment to others, right?
Is that the goal?
Yeah. And so we just need to be tricky with the word attachment because in Buddhism, that's an affliction. In psychology, it can be a real healthy, wonderful thing. So it's just a word thing. I just always want to clarify. A healthy attachment, care for others, right? A love, essentially a love. And so, yeah, the goal is to see the same value in that other's grandchild as mine, or another grandfather, or another being. The ultimate goal is to see all beings with the same degree that I love my grandchild. That is the goal. And it's actually the very first step in the 7-point cause and effect for bodhicitta. It's the first thing you do, which could take a few lives.
So just the follow-up question, with that idea then, I don't know if it's achievable, but we would have equal care, or not to use the word attachment, but equal connection to all beings, regardless of whether or not they're, you know, a child, a grandchild, spouse, grandparent, a dog, whatever, we all.
Yep. Yeah, that all living beings, all sentient beings, actually all sentient beings, that we would have that same care and compassion, grandchild, grandfather, political person, you know, just the dog. I didn't mean to put the dog right next to political person that easily, but, you know, animals, etc. And so when you see people like, for example, like Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, you know, like, you know, whether it's the dog out front, whether it's a Western visitor, whether it's, you know, someone she's worked with for many years, she's just going to attend to you with that care, you know. And the interesting thing is, you know, once you're gone, she's not going to miss you. Yeah, it's like, you're the only thing that's important right now. This is it. We're here. You leave, okay, this other thing's important. And so because missing has sort of an angst, right? There's a bit of an attachment, a pain, versus a love that's more pure and understanding around interdependence. So yeah, the ultimate goal would be more at a level like that. And so we want to expand that same care, but the idea is not that I lessen the care for my grandchild. Attachment lessens my care. You know, attachment has, and again, I'm using the Buddhist words of attachment. It's always an afflicted attachment, not a healthy one, right? In relationships, we need healthy attachments, right? That's the whole attachment theory in psychology. You know, but the word, when it's used in a Buddhist context, is an exaggerated one, right? And that is identifying the me and mine, and then them as independent, and then we get caught up in you know, how this is more important than others, and you know, we notice that, right? Like we can hear about the loss of someone. You know, we just had a former senator pass today. It's on the news. And, you know, some people knew him and care about him and so forth. So there's going to be a wide range of feeling about someone who lost, but you lose a dear friend, you know, there's a huge, you know, potential grieving process. So we can already see, yeah, how there's a different degree of connection and attachment to one person's life as opposed to another. So if we can approach this, though, from understanding, and actually, April 21st, we'll have a half-day retreat here in the Heroic Heart, which will address this specifically, I do believe. It's called Valuing Good Friends. And valuing good friends is going to say that these people I don't like actually give me life. I mean, just seeing that, knowing that. And these people that I don't like suffered the same way I suffered. And if I really get that I'm in a prison of samsara, I'm in a conditioned existence that is obscured with these afflictions and this karma. But underneath it is Buddha nature. Underneath of it, nothing's wrong, nothing's broken. I have a disease, I have an affliction of afflictions and these polluted karma. The we all have it. We all have this disease. Some have more advanced causes, conditions. So if you think about, everybody is just in varying degrees of cancer. And some people have forms that are in remission. Some people have forms that are pretty highly advanced. Some people have very painful forms. Then we start seeing that, wow, everyone in this way is all afflicted with this dukkha. And some people have it a lot worse than others. And so the people who are doing the most harm, they have a greater affliction, a greater disease, and they're suffering more. Then there's kind of a nice approach to recognize that actually we are all giving life to each other. We're all, as I've gone through, and I don't want to keep beating that dead horse. Maybe I do. But there's not an iota of anything about me that didn't come from the efforts of others. Not even my thoughts, my words, language, nothing. And that's just true, I think. I don't think that's disputable. We've investigated that. My body didn't even come from me. And food, clothing, language, education, abilities, physicality, everything, right? It's all arising in dependence upon others and conditioning, and we're interdependent. We're not independent. And that's the deal. And the more we get that, then it's easier to expand that care out to others. And then when I see my own struggle and suffering, I can recognize that in others. Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo had her big dream about seeing herself in prison, and the prison, the basements were really awful and terrible, but the upper ones are like penthouses and really nice, and it was this big metaphor for samsara. And she had this very vivid dream, and the way she described it is just like a big revelation, a big awakening, and that we're all in this prison, and some people have it pretty good, some people don't, and she was plotting to escape, and the guards, are there, and she's convincing a few people, but some people don't want to leave, right? Some people don't want to leave. And some people do. She gets a group, and they go, and they realize the guards don't care if you leave. They don't care. And and they head out. And they're running and they're running and they're running and they're running. And they keep seeing how long this prison is, and it's just endless. And once she's getting tired, she wants to quit. And then she realizes if she quits, the others will quit who are with her. And that's bodhicitta. That's this. That's what drives the desire to be free, so you can help others. But the bigger metaphor there is that most people don't even know they're in a prison, aren't even interested in escaping. They're chasing happiness in the cause of their suffering. And trying to unravel that, they don't even know about it. And so that gives rise to compassion for them. And we can see it all the time, how people struggle. So technically, in the 7-point cause and effect method of bodhicitta, the first 0 step is equanimity. It's really equalizing that equality around people we like, don't like, people are neutral. And that's why we have all these practices on seeing the value in others, and then seeing if we can extend that care in a healthy way towards others, and remembering that healthy care has also to do with boundaries, accountability. And people doing horrific things go to prison. That's a compassionate act. It's not co-signing unhealthy behavior. compassion is about removing suffering, but recognizing the person doing the harm is deeply afflicted, but for the safety of others and for their own potential, putting them in prison, separating them from harming others, that's going to be a compassion act. So we still get to act in a very clear, healthy way. We get to show up. I've actually showed up at protests with my teacher. I'm a Buddhist monk. We got our signs. We're doing our thing, but we're not doing it out of anger. And so that's the mind that we want to cultivate. But we have such a tendency to don't like those people, and we like these people, and we stick labels on, and people do stuff, but we don't like them. And then we judge a person by something they did, 20 years ago, and I'm still holding on to that, even though, they've done a million other things. And how would I like to be judged by something I did 20 years ago? Love is a good thing. I wouldn't mind it, hang on to that good thing I said once. But often someone will hang on to that other thing I did. And you think about it, I was thinking about today, just someone who popped up in my mind that I hadn't seen in a long time. And I just have an image of them from, probably 8 years ago. That's not who they are today. I'll have to go see them in person, see what my experience is today. But kind of put this person together in this way that I see them. And I have a caricature in my mind. And so this is getting to the root of how we struggle and we continue a cycle. And even though we can intellectually talk about these things, how do we love in a more healthy way our dear ones? And then once we learn how to do that, how do we extend that love to others that aren't so dear? But often, our biggest lessons are with the people closest to us, right? Because we're most attached there. So that is where the big classroom of samsara takes place. Usually right in our own homes, man. And then our, the people closest to us, because that's where that primary issue is, that craving, right? Someone to be different, someone I need, some things to be like that, our children, our grandkids, and all of that. That's going to be just the most clear dynamic. Most of us can be pretty nice to someone we don't know for a while, but when our loved ones do some stuff, that can be pretty hard. So I'm just going to pause there, see if there's any thoughts or questions online or here in the room. I see people got their thinking hats on. Need to take a peek at where we're at here. Compare. Yeah. So I think craving is going to be, the big lesson of understanding the nature of dukkha. And craving can be how I just want things to be different than they are. We can be seated in a nice place. I'm seated in a pretty nice room, and with nice people. And yet my mind could want to be somewhere totally different, or I could want things to be different. And my mind's not attending to everything that's already amazing, right? So noticing craving in a sense of a context of desire for someone or something or myself or a situation to be different, even when, right now it could be quite wonderful. And then if I catch myself with stress or irritation or frustration, emotional struggles. And if I unravel them a bit, is it because I'm exaggerating, my need for something or my desire for something, or the pain that something might inflict, or I'm even carrying that with me? To a degree, it doesn't actually exist in that way. And so that's the whole journey, is to at some point recognize that all of these afflicted states, are always just coming from just seeing myself differently and exaggerating things. Pretty clear statement, but that is like the most advanced realization. So it's a journey to be there. It's a journey to be there. And I think most humans are pretty much working on, how do I be nice to my kids and partner, and how do I, care for my dog in a healthy way, and how do I take care of this body in a healthy way? How do I be a good community member? How do I be a good friend? And if I can actually, as simple as that sounds, as I just pointed out, it's actually the real work, because the people closest to us are where this is the strongest. So learning how to love without attachment, unhealthy attachment, like that's one of the greatest lessons we could have. And that includes us, because often that's the hardest thing. Even in talking about this, people can start evaluating their degree of or capacity to love or to care or to be healthy, and then we beat ourselves up. So literally, the starting point is in our own homes. It's in the people closest to us. It's in our friends. It's in our work situations. It's in our current environment that we are most connected to, that we're going to see and experience desire in an unhealthy way. And so if we can unravel that in a healthier way and then be able to extend it to others, that's a real good way to make progress. Yeah.
Kurt seemed to have a question. You had his hand up a little bit.
Okay. I don't always see the hands because I only see a few of you. So, Kurt, you had a question or a thought or a comment, or maybe you could just set us straight. Could you just set us straight? That would be good.
I think I got it all figured out.
Thank you.
No, been struggling with this for a while. I guess my question to listening to you today is, so I try to put myself in that place with no craving. What's the motive force? I mean, what do people that don't have any craving do? Right? I mean, how do you? Why even? I mean, I can't see it. Right? It's hard to imagine what. I mean, when I start looking at it, I don't do anything that isn't involved with craving. When we define it the way that you're talking about it, and so, what does that life look like?
Yeah. So the key to always remember is exaggerated versus unexaggerated. Okay, healthy, more accurate. So, right, we have a desire to be a good parent. Healthy desire, right? So I'm motivated to do healthy things and be a good parent, be loving and kind, have good boundaries, learn how to do that. That's a normal, healthy desire. I don't want people to suffer, good compassion. What we want to pay attention to is the desire arising from exaggeration and attachment in an unhealthy way. So still very motivated to get up early, take care of yourself so you can take care of your kids, so you can be a good partner. Those motives, as a matter of fact, when you think about Jetsuma's drive to have all sentient beings be free, it's not that she's unmotivated. She's motivated to a much greater degree than I can even wrap my head around. But the motivations are based in reality and in a clear path, in a way that that actually teaches how to love. So we can be motivated to be able to do that. So we're always going to have desire, and that's the kind of little trick question whenever I went to some college as Buddhists, they always got the philosophy students as, they always think they catch you with this little thing. Well, Buddhism says desire is the root of all suffering, and yet don't you Buddhists desire, enlightenment? And but that's not actually what it said. It's desire born of ignorance is causing the suffering. And you can have desire for awakening enlightenment that's destructive, that's just ego informing and is not going to get you enlightened because it's wrapped up in that striving desire. And then, it's like Jet Sima would say, who's the I that's going to get enlightened? The person that doesn't exist, I'm very attached to. And so back to your point, Kurt, is that we do all these healthy and wonderful things with a desire to be healthy and well, to be a good partner, to be a good parent, to be a good community member, to be able to benefit others. But that fire of desire is fueled with wisdom and compassion. And I'm sure you do it, frequently. We're just very keenly aware of when we don't do it. He might even do the dishes without Keith asking. I don't know. It's possible. So whenever we have this very big view of this and these big ultimate goals, then we can get overwhelmed. Then we get wow. And then we always come back to, well, let's be where we are and let's see how can I be a little healthier at work? How can I be a little healthier in my community? How can I notice some of the angst around my worry or how someone should be, or how I'm judging myself, and kind of notice those desires and kind of work with them in a more gentle way and see, can we recognize that as I suffer, others suffer? I told a story last night, which I've told here before, and I'm not going to tell the story probably. That was a little joke. But the gist of it was that it's around forgiveness. And when we forgive people, we feel better, right? We don't suffer, right? We let go of that resentment. We let go of that anger. We get better. And one of the people in that meeting, put up a common phrase that, hurt people, right? So I think sometimes we've heard that say, hurt people, right? That's why they're hurting people. But, after the story I told, this other guy made another comment. He said, yeah, hurt people until they don't. And he made the point that everybody in this room has been hurt, but we're not returning that hurt anymore. Even though we've been hurt, even though we've walked through difficult things, we're not walking around being malicious jerks all the time. That was his point. Even though we have these afflictions, we still show up with care and compassion because that's our ultimate nature. And so, real valuable to understand that in spite of all the dukkha, there's such a strong impulse for humanity to be kind, to be helpful, to not hurt, to learn how to be okay. And to recognize that in ourselves instead of always evaluating ourselves by what we're not doing right or some big aspiration to be Gandhi. Let's just be a little better today, if we can. A little healthier today if we can. And then over time, those things develop. And so here in this overview, the teachers are guiding us just to understand the process. And once we understand the mechanisms, well, we can work with those. Notice the attachments, notice the afflictions that are unhealthy, polluted. And by polluted, it's just simply coming from a place of misunderstanding, which created the karma and the imprints. So the more that we can understand interdependence, the more we can understand that there's no independent you, that there's an you that arises independence upon moment to moment, things that are arising, that we're all interdependent in this journey. And then, might even start seeing people as your family. And you might value a good friend. By that, I mean all beings, seeing that value. And we may even recognize that the people who did us great harm are contributing to our resiliency and wisdom and growth that we have today. And have some gratitude for that, even. It's how we attend to it. So, again, back to Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo. Her big comment is people want to get rid of their anger, but they don't want to get rid of their attachments. And it's kind of like easy to work with the stuff I don't like and very difficult to work with the stuff I do like. And so there's an opportunity here to see, can I actually love my children in a way that's healthy and meaningful, and let them be how, their aspects and their way, while having good boundaries and the role models and the guidelines. And, how do I do that? That's big work, isn't it? It's easier in the grandparent stage.
You're what?
In the grandparent stage, yeah. Laura and I are getting to that journey. It's but yes.
You bring up being a grandparent. I've been thinking through this whole thing now. Being a grandparent has been a great teaching lately, so my son's daughter is 4.5 months old. I got to see on Saturday and Monday. And I could be today missing her. She's absolutely adorable. She's just and she's starting to really smile and squeal, and so joyful to be with her. But I could leave and really have that sense of I'm really missing her. And I realized that I was thinking about how, if I allowed myself to really miss her, I actually could also put pressure on her parents to make sure they visited us. And it could really add pressure and suffering in a lot of ways. Or I could suffer by making more time for her and pushing away things I need to get done too. It's interesting how that could be such a driver. So I've been really working with that and just being present with her and enjoying and then wishing them well while I tend to things. Yeah, good practice.
You guys hear most of that? Good, because there's no way I was going to be able to repeat that with the eloquence that she just shared. I was like, oh, I hope they can hear this. I was glad I could hear it. But yeah, great examples though, right? And then we pressure our kids and, and all that. Yeah. So, but how do we do those interventions when they aren't necessary and healthy? How do we, do all those things? It's quite a journey. But driving it all, if somebody, if you embrace rebirth, then it's easier. Okay. So if you embrace rebirth, much easier. Because then at that point, then we've all been each other's kids. Okay. So it's awesome. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, thanks, Mom. And literally that is a step in the 7-point mind train, is to come to a point of seeing all beings as having been your mother. And then, if people with rebirth cycles, people born in Asia and all that, where it's just kind of, yeah, of course. Much easier for them to expand that and just go, okay, we've been a family, we've been family. And it's a kind of fun thing I used to play with was, everyone says namaste, right? Namaste. And it's all like, I recognize and honor the God in you, or the divine in you. And lots of ways people explain namaste, but I used to go with mamaste. I recognize and honor the mother in you, and thank you, for giving me life, And somebody even had a sticker, namaste, on it somewhere. That was pretty funny. But it softens it though, because we can recognize, and I think that's what Jitsuma in her book will do on the 21st, is really, how do we recognize all these others are giving you life, right? They are your mother in that capacity. And you don't even need rebirth for that. You can start to see how people have given you the life that you have. They've given birth to who you are. And, so the deal though is that we need to water that thought, see it, bring it into mind, because our mind will so quickly go back to the habituated conditioning. We have a nice talk here tonight, and then we might think about it a little more, but most of the time we're living in that sort of me-mind experience. And so the unpacking, the methods are to bring it to mind every day, a little meditation, a little coming back to reality, the rare and precious life, the interdependence. So we just water that every day. And as we water it every day, it becomes more of the way we think. We literally brainwash ourselves, washing out the pollution of grasping and clinging by bringing to mind some clarity. But bringing to mind in meditation, clarity is not the end all be all. We actually have to experience it directly. We have to, be out in the world doing it, and noticing it and working with it and having that experience and learning from it. Rumor has it there's a path to do that. I think it's somewhere in one of these books. And so those paths of unraveling this prison. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap up on, unless somebody has some thoughts or questions. We do have time for that. And don't raise your hand, just unmute. And don't raise somebody else's hand, because that would be kind of putting them on the spot.
Well, I just have a comment, in psychology, there's secure attachment, insecure
Right.
attachment, avoidant attachment, anxious attachment style. That's the grasping, the cravings, the aversion. And so I think, it's like, you talked about, kind of like the, it's like these thoughts, or the codependency, the enabling behavior. None of these thoughts are really that new. It's just a different way of thinking. But we all know that anxious attachment or avoid does lead to suffering. And so healthy attachment is what we're or secure attachment is what we're.
Right. And so I'm not sure if everybody heard all that, but that's why we have to always be clear with terms, in psychology and stuff. There's unhealthy and the healthy attachments, and there's, you know, a whole understanding about attachment theory with our race and so forth. So to some degree, there are different terms that we're using, like healthy attachment and anxious attachment and so forth. But I think if we look even a little more deeply, some of the things in our modern world that we would view as a healthy attachment is still an unhealthy attachment. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so just peering even more deeply in that, a lot of things we, you know, there's no way I can put like I'm the world's greatest grandfather on a cup, right? Like, you know, or, you know, my kids, you know, the best, you know, whatever. And, you know, we do it. So it's just so commonly uh just in our culture, even around the messaging, you know, my honor roll kid or this and that. And yet there's a healthy way to celebrate the achievements of your, right? But how do we do that in a way that balances it with somebody else? Or some kid maybe has had some learning disabilities, doesn't get that sticker, and how do we care about them? And so that's inviting us, you know, to just have the healthiest care and concern for all, but really starting with our own and really getting very subtle into what's healthy and unhealthy. Even in how I view my partner and kids and work colleagues. Yeah. Any of you guys got any tips on that? No, we just take it a day at a time, but bringing to mind the inner defense and bringing to mind the kind things that people do for you, seeing the kindness of others, valuing good friends. You know, postal workers, you know, and that always pops into my mind. I see ours like all the time when I'm walking, and that guy's just going up and down, you know, getting everybody's mail, getting the stuff, you know, to people. And there's a real beauty when I start seeing the value in others, and I'm not focused on me so much. How I need others to be so I can be happy. That's the rub. There's the whole thing right there, I think. If they were different, then I could be happy. If my partner was different, my kids were different, the thing was different, then I can be happy. And yet that could also be, I could be in an unhealthy situation, those, and need to be different in a different thing. So people can take these to two extremes. I can stay in unhealthy situations, you know, like a work situation that's just sucking the life out of you, and being told, well, if you had better mindfulness, you know, you could do your job and not be affected by that. And there's a whole, you know, underbelly of mindfulness that, you know, kind of gives that message that, you know, you have resilience and you have this. And, it's not them, it's you. Whereas, no, you know, pretty much an unhealthy work environment. I'm going to get out of here and get a new job and do something I feel good about. You spend most of your life at work, you know, put yourself in a good, healthy situation. And so there's always these extremes. We can go both ways. And so, which I think is getting to your point, you know, the extremes, but coming back to the balance of that and what's healthy and well, whether it's, you know, a work thing, even a vacation. People can overplan and get pretty attached to a vacation and have things not go so well. Yeah. All right. I gave you guys a chance. So we're gonna wrap it up. And all right, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated from our time together here. Just recognizing Just as we are, there are many others. All kinds of lives that are struggling and suffering in ways that sometimes are very extreme, sometimes very subtle. And let us dedicate the merit that we have cultivated through our lives for the benefit of all, that they may have the opportunities to be free of those afflictions, to be liberated. And for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may extract the essence of these teachings in ways that help us be kind and gentle to ourselves, to allow us the opportunity to more skillfully engage with others and to work with our afflictions in a nurturing way, slowly unraveling those attachments that are unhealthy and nurturing a healthier connection to ourselves and others in ways that are very supportive. And let's go ahead and dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever. All right, well, thank you all so much. Such a gift to be with all of you. And I'm going to gallery so I can see who's here. Okay. All right, look at this screw that stuck it out. All right. Lots of love to you all. Please be well. Take good care of yourselves and good care of those you come in contact with.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare